a lot of your friends, they'll support you and they want you to win. They just don't want you to win more than they're winning.
Yeah.
Well, first they'll judge you, then they'll criticize and hate you. And then when you become super, super, super successful and they see you on the TV all the time and the newspapers, then they'll say, I always believed in him. Hey, can we have a coffee?
Them up, yeah.
So I thought, well, if they're going to talk about me, at least let me get paid.
Of course.
So my grandma and my granddad, my dad's parents, when I was like 19, 20, they loaned me 15 grand.
Samuel Leeds is one of Britain's most successful property entrepreneurs. A high-flying investor, a best-selling author, and founder of a leading property education company, Samuel is recognised as one of the brightest young stars in British business. Following his meteoric rise to success...
So as an employee, you've got to ask yourself, if you worked as hard on your own business as you do at the moment for your employer on your job, how rich would you be? Probably very rich.
By becoming a multi-millionaire in his 20s, Samuel is in the elite echelons of UK property investors.
Hello Samuel, how are you? Really, really nice to be in your house. It's been amazing, beautiful home by the way.
Thank you.
So thanks for welcoming here. So so it's just before we start the podcast basically, I'd like to ask you, what is your contact from your earlier age? Because men are made, or someone is made based on their childhood, how they've grown up. Could you take us back a little bit of how you actually started?
Yeah, I never thought as a kid I'd end up being a multi-millionaire, that's for sure. I was not very good academically. I think in school they teach you to either go down the academic route, if you want to be a doctor, a lawyer, go to uni, or get a job as a labourer, use your hands, you know. So I just thought I'm probably going to be a dustbin man or something. And then when I left school, I was working for my dad. My dad was an entertainer. He was doing like discos, children's magic parties, working on market stands, selling stuff. I was getting paid £25 a day. And I remember just thinking, you know what, I really want more, you know, for my life. Didn't have any money, didn't have a rich family. I ended up reading books on like the power of the internet. And realising there was a whole nother world. And that's kind of what opened my eyes up to business.
Right, okay. So at your childhood then, I know we've been told to go to school, maybe start nursery, but what really triggers you to think about, maybe I am an entrepreneur? Because people may think you're a property investor, but I know you are an entrepreneur. So what at that childhood, what was your influence to allow you to kind of look at this way of doing things?
Yeah, well, I did a lot of paper rounds as a kid. And I remember, even when I felt like I was terrible in school, I used to go, on the way back from school, I used to have a little Bradford and Bingley little bank slip where I'd go and put money in, because I'd sell stuff at school and do paper rounds and whatnot. And I had a little bit of money, not a lot of money. I think when I was about 13, 14, I had like maybe £1,000. And I was just obsessed with just growing this as much as it could go as a kid, just for fun. And I remember one of my school teachers, and I remember showing her my Bradford. I went, hey, look at this. And she said, that's more money than I've got. And that kind of gave me self-esteem, because it made me think, I am good at something. I might not be very good in class. I might not be very good at lots of subjects, but hey, I got more money than my teacher. So that was, I guess, you know, the first, okay, maybe I'm good at making money. You know, maybe I can be an entrepreneur.
Wow, that is a very good way of thinking about it, because even me when I was young, like I used to save money. Anyone who throws a penny or coin around, I put it in a box, keep it so I can buy stuff.
Dude, I used to, you know when they throw 2 pences in the wishing wells?
I'll
be that guy taking them all out.
Same here, taking them up and then I save it. I like to watch it grow. So as soon as it grows, I go to the bank, change it all to paper money. So I really relate to that. So about the influence, how has your mother and your father influenced you to be the person you are today?
So my parents were both, I guess you could say, entrepreneurs. My dad worked for himself. He had his own business. He didn't have, you know, lots of members of staff in an office, but he was a hustler. You know, growing up, my dad was a gardener. He used to cut grass and stuff like that. Then he was doing magic shows. He's selling network marketing, health and nutrition. And so my dad's always kind of had that. My mom, growing up, was a mobile hairdresser. And I think that they definitely were a positive influence on me in terms of thinking outside the box. And my mom was and my dad were one of those people, you know, when you get in trouble with your teachers. I'd get home and I'd be like, or I'd have a bad report, and they'd always take my side. They'd
Really?
always,
Yeah, lucky then.
Yeah, probably not like,
Yeah,
they wouldn't, they'd just be like, don't worry. They definitely saw something in me.
Yeah.
My parents split up when I was 7, so I had kind of 2 different, things going on. But no, my dad was pretty hard on me at times, but they were definitely outside the box, and I definitely have to credit my parents. They didn't give me any money, but they did give me, the ability to think outside the box.
So I guess watching your dad having different sort of businesses, and your mom being a mobile hairdresser, for example, I think probably, is that not what makes you understand the value of money as well? Knowing that you have to work in order to earn whatever you earn?
100%. And my dad used to sell me stuff.
Yeah.
Because he'd sell stuff on the market stalls. Right?
Yeah.
He'd sell like magic tricks and different things because he was a magician. And then he'd say to me, if you want to buy stuff from me, then you can sell it and make a profit. So he'd sell stuff to me. So I understood money as a kid, 100%. Absolutely understood money.
Wow.
I didn't know how to run a business. I didn't think I would be super successful, but I understood how to hustle and how to make a living, even as a kid.
Wow. Some people would say, okay, my dad is a business person, my mom is a hairdresser. And they're not kind of that poor. Why should I worry about doing my own thing? So what was that trigger point to say, I know you started your paper round, your dad doing something with you, but what gives you that motivation to say, you know what, I want to take you to the next level?
Well, when I left school, I had a spiritual experience. I gave my life to Jesus as a teenager. I was like 16, 17, and got plugged into a local church. And my church wanted to send me out on trips to different parts of the world. I ended up, even as a teenager, they sent me out to Pozo Blanco in north of Spain. I was working in a drug rehab center, helping people that were trying to get off drugs. Then I went to Ludhiana, which is in Punjab, India, and I was working in orphanages, and it was an incredible experience. I went to, even as a teenager, I spent a month in Zambia, working in a school called Chengelo School Makushi, and after that went to different villages, and I met some of the poorest people, the poorest of the poor. I went out to make an impact, but I came back different myself, and I thought, you know what, you can't help poor people when you're a poor person yourself. No. So I didn't have any money or anything, but I thought, man, that kind of made me think money is not just about material things, it's about making a difference. And money is also about just having time and choices. So I realized that working, even if you think you have a business, actually, sometimes people that say they own a business, actually they own a job.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So my parents, okay, we're business people, cool. Maybe you are entrepreneurs, but unless a business can function without you in it, then it's really a job. Yeah, so, that was kind of when I started studying, reading books on business. I was interested. I wanted to have freedom. I wanted to have time. And I kind of moved into the realm of business. I joined Business Networking International. I was just a kid. I was a teenager. I joined Business Network International, I joined PIN meetings, I started going to business networking events, and then, met mentors and trainers, and, just threw myself in that world.
Fantastic. Thanks very much for sharing that with us. You talked a lot about your grandma, right? How has she influenced you to be who you are? Because I know she played a pivotal role.
Massive. Both my grandparents. Yeah. So my mom's parents, my grandma and granddad, they really supported me even as a kid. My granddad, my mom's dad, he gave me my very first business lesson. Because I was so bad in school, he was like, let me run a business, because he could see I was interested in business. He didn't know loads about business, but he was like, Samuel's interested in business. So when I was like a teenager, like 13, 14, he sat me down and said, let me run a business lesson with you to try and make me feel more positive about academic and learning. So, massive love to my mom's parents. My grandparents sadly passed away a couple of months ago. They both passed. Yeah, they both passed a couple months. Well, maybe last month actually. They both passed within a couple of weeks of each other. My other grandparents, my dad's parents, again, massively influential in my life. My grandma actually, when I was trying to get a deal secured, I think it was like my second or third deal. I was only a teenager. I was like 19. I needed like 15 grand. And I was trying to raise it from all these property networking events. And everyone was just like, not interested. I felt like a leper.
Yeah.
You know, I'm just like a teenager trying to raise money. Everyone's like, nah. And even though the deal was good, I had good contracts. And I remember, I was like literally 2 days away from having to get the deal financed. Otherwise, it would fall through. And I was like embarrassed and I felt like giving up. And then I was telling my grandma, this situation and there's this. And then my grandma looked over at my granddad and I was like, I could tell from the way they looked at each other that they had the money.
Yeah.
It's only 15,000. And I was thinking, damn, sometimes things are right under your nose.
You don't realize it.
And you don't realize it. So many people are trying to raise finance and they'll go to networking events. But hang on, what about your family? Yeah. So my grandma and my granddad, my dad's parents, when I was like 19, 20, they loaned me 15 grand.
Wow, bless you.
And that was a loan. It wasn't a gift.
Yeah.
They wanted interest, of course. So I agreed to pay them 10% a year for 5 years.
Okay.
And at the end of the 5 years, when I went to pay them back, I was like really grateful that they lent me the money. Obviously, at this point, I was doing really well. I think I was actually I was a property millionaire.
Yeah. Okay.
I had a £1 million portfolio, so I was doing well. Mm-hmm. And then I met with them and I said, hey, thank you so much for lending me the 15 grand. I said, give me your bank details, I'll send it back. And they were like, well, we don't want it back.
Okay.
And I said, what do you mean? They said, well, we, every time you've been paying us £1,500 a year, we've been using that money to go on a cruise.
Yeah, okay.
And it's like a free cruise. So keep it for another year. So the interesting thing is, in business, sometimes people are trying to sponge off their parents or off their family or but the key is when you can demonstrate that you are actually a person of value. Yeah. See, I help my grandparents. Mm-hmm. Obviously, they help me.
Of course.
More than I help them.
Yeah.
But this is creating a business win-win situation. This is not saying, oh, can you support me? Can you give me some money to start my business? This is saying, I'm starting anyway, with or without anyone standing by my side. I'm going to be valuable. I'm going to push hard. I'm going to show people my results. If my grandma hadn't seen that I'd already done a couple of deals successfully, she probably would never have invested. Yeah. But because she'd seen, okay, he's done a couple of deals, he's doing okay, he's making money, she then invests. So, and again, I never claim to be somebody who is a self-made person because I don't believe in self-made. I believe that everybody is where they are as a result of people that believed in them.
Correct.
Imparted knowledge, wisdom, invested something, whether it be time. My granddad, my mum's granddad, gave me some of his time. Yeah. And then my grandma, my dad's parents, they gave me a little bit of money. And it's like a seed, right? They planted a small seed. And now it's like, what am I going to do with that seed? Am I going to water the seed? Am I going to grow a tree? Or am I, now I've had a lot of, I've had a lot of good people around me. And one of the reasons that I now feel compelled to support people even like you, was because people supported me.
Correct, yeah.
And people believed in me. So now I want to support and believe in other people that maybe weren't good in school or maybe otherwise wouldn't necessarily be successful. So yeah, I
like that. I like that question, and I do relate to that. When I started my property investment journey, I remember you saying, it used to be my little secret. I don't want my family members to know about it. I don't want anybody to know about it. And I remember you saying something, if you don't tell people who you are, how are they going to get to know what you're doing? So in my tradition, they always tell you need to hide, don't let people know what you're doing because they want to protect you kind of. But since I let go of that, letting everybody know what I do, the world opens to me. I have people ringing, calling, saying, I want to do joint venture partnership with you. And I remember recently, one of my investors worked with me. He said, oh, Raheem, I want to get into properties, but I haven't got money. I said, okay, let's look at what we can do about what you have. He started thinking about different avenues of raising that money. I said, have you thought about your dad? Have you thought about your mom? He goes oh, they don't have money. Don't worry about it. I said, listen, when you're having dinner, present that deal to them. It's a no money down deal, no money left in deal. Yeah. Present it to them and see what they say. No, they haven't got money. He was literally crying against them. So he did what I've advised him to do, sat down on a dinner table, said, Dad, I've got this deal. I need £50,000, but I haven't got any money. The dad's okay. I don't have the £15,000 clearly, but I can give you £10,000. Go to your uncle may be able to help you that. Go to your aunties, they'll be able to raise that money. So that guy was able to raise over 50,000 by just looking within the family
100%.
that he thought was poor.
100%.
Right, so I like that idea when you looked in within your family to be able to raise that, because at the beginning, they're the only people who trust you, basically, especially if you haven't got that history of investment. So I really, really relate to that. Thanks for sharing that with us. So looking back then, who you are today is a consequential to your response to your pastor, who talked down on you when you started your property investment journey, saying probably in business investment is not really a thing if you want to go into the religion, if you want to get into deep into a religion kind of thing. So how were you able? How was that become a consequential to get you to where you want to go today?
Yeah, it's actually slight correction.
Okay.
My church and my pastor and everybody actually supported me.
Oh, that's good. Okay.
And when I started business, they all said, "Yeah, great, awesome." When I started getting problems, was when I started being successful. And that's what I think you'll find. You'll find that a lot of your friends, they'll support you and they want you to win. They just don't want you to win more than they're winning.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, in the church, there's a lot of people that are saying, "Oh, it's greedy, you've got too many houses," you know, but I'm thinking, well, hang on a minute. Who sets the bar? Do you set the bar? Are you fine making £3,000 a month? Living in a nice semi-detached house with a garden and 3 bedrooms? That's okay, that's not greedy.
Yeah.
Even when there's people with nothing across the world, that's fine. But me, I'm too successful. Basically, anyone that's more successful than you have a problem with.
Yeah.
And, you know, I grappled with this as a Christian, and I ended up spending 3 years going to Bible college. I studied biblical economics and came to the conclusion that actually it's not what you have, it's what's got you.
Yeah.
If you have a lot of money, but you hold it with open hands and a generous heart and use that as a tool to help people, then go get as much as you can. And it's also about how you make it. How are you making your money? Are you making your money ethically by actually giving people a good product, affordable homes and a service, or are you making your money by being ruthless? And you know, I'd like to think I'm not perfect, but the money that I have made and continue to make is by actually giving people great products, great services, great accommodation, by taking houses that are run down and turning them into family homes, by taking rundown factories that are good for nothing and turning them into affordable housing for lots and lots of people. And you know, then when I make money, I'll give generously, and you know, we've got the foundation, which we do a lot of good work. And ultimately, I think as a Christian, God looks at your heart. You know,
of course,
it's not about. He doesn't look at your pocket; he looks at your heart.
So, do you then feel distance with those people who are kind of a bit envy, or I would say jealous of you growing more than they did? Are they still in contact with you, or do they just kept away from you because they think they're not kind of the same sort of person as you are?
Well, first they'll judge you, then they'll criticize and hate you, and then when you become super, super, super successful and they see you on the TV all the time and the newspapers, then they'll say, "I always believed in him. Hey, can we have a coffee?" And that's when you've got to remember to get better and not bitter. So a few people I've reconnected with and whatnot, but at the end of the day, it's important to look at those that stood with you through the beginning. There are certain people in my life that stood with me at the beginning, and those are the people now that I'll have as my inner circle.
Wow, brilliant! Thank you so much for that. What role? I know you've been traveling when you're doing your Christian thing, going to different countries and all that sort of thing. What does lack of money in those areas, looking at how they were living, shape your view about money?
Well, I think that, listen, there's no, you can't just throw money at everything. Sometimes it's more than that. Sometimes it's about education and all kinds of stuff. And also, you can't go somewhere where they've got a different culture and a whole different way of life. You know this. You're from what, Sierra Leone?
Yeah, Guinea, Sierra Leone.
Okay, so like for example, I was in Uganda a few months ago, and I was working in quite a lot of schools, and there was a lot of need in these schools, and there were some charities that donated to one school 27 computers, which is a really kind thing to do. However, there's no electricity.
What's the point?
The head teacher doesn't know how to work a computer. They had been sat there, these computers, for 7 years.
Wow.
Just completely unused. So it's like, you can't just throw money at stuff.
No.
So, I've done a lot of stuff in England to try and help and give back and make the world. I mean, ultimately, I think everyone's goal is to leave the world a little bit of a better place than you found it, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, my wife is from Zimbabwe. We're going to Zimbabwe actually in April.
Wow.
In Uganda, we just finished building a school. So we built a school for.
I'm going to ask you about that. I've got that question.
Oh, good. Yeah. Well, no, it's an incredible story.
Yeah, I would love to hear that story. Definitely.
But it's amazing how much you can do with not that much money.
Yeah.
Just £1,000, you can build a toilet.
Yeah, of course.
Where there's a school of 1,000 people where the girls don't have a toilet. You know what I mean? And it's like you can do an awful lot with a little bit if you know how and where.
Brilliant.
But,
okay.
yeah.
So let's talk about education, right? And how about school? And how is school like for you growing up?
Well, school was terrible for me growing up. I was useless at school. I sat on a special needs desk.
Wow.
Literally, I've got ADHD, I've got dyslexia, I didn't like school, I was always suspended, verging on being expelled, didn't enjoy it, wasn't popular, wasn't particularly liked. It's just naff.
Right. Okay.
Never flunked out, didn't even take most of my exams.
Wow.
Didn't even bother. I only did 3 exams and that was it.
Wow. Brilliant. Okay, thanks for answering that question. Were you bullied at school?
No, I wasn't bullied.
Okay, good. Some people say traditional education is dead and redundant. What is your viewpoint on that?
I don't think it's dead. It depends on what you want to do, right? If you want to be a doctor, you have to go to uni.
Yeah.
And you have to take the qualifications to learn to be a doctor.
Yeah.
That's traditional education. If you want to be a lawyer, you've got to go to law school.
Yeah.
There's a place for traditional education. Jim Rohn says that formal education will make you a living.
Yeah.
But self-education will make you a fortune.
Absolutely.
So it depends on what you want. If you want to be a business person, then in my opinion, traditional education is not going to help you get there.
I know you said your wife, Amanda, is from Zimbabwe. Why not Zimbabwe?
I mean, listen, we've been to many different countries and done a lot of different stuff. Kenya, Tanzania, Zambia. Zimbabwe is an interesting place. The government aren't quite so friendly. Okay. So we like to go in and we work with the local councils, the chiefs, the government, and get approval of everything that we're doing and make sure that there's sustainability there. And in Zimbabwe, with the some of the history and things like that, it's a little bit more challenging. And also, there's a few political reasons, but I'd love to do stuff in Zimbabwe. My wife is very keen to do things in Zimbabwe, and we are looking at investing in Zimbabwe as well. But again, even that's difficult because I don't want to get political, but it's just difficult. The way that the government can act and just take land off people, and it's a little bit tricky.
At the age of 18, you started your property investment.
17, yeah.
17.
Yeah.
What was the reason to start properties? Because your dad was doing something completely different to properties and your mom was doing something completely different. But why did you actually choose property?
It was actually, I went to a property business networking event and it just grabbed me. The fact that with property, it was more the passive income aspect of being able to buy a house or own a house or control a house. And then the rent just comes in every month. And I thought, well, hang on a minute. I liked Monopoly as a kid and I thought maybe I can do this in real life. Also, I noticed that all the rich people were investing in property. If you look on the Sunday Times rich list, they're all in property pretty much, some way or another. And I thought, well, looking at what my dad's doing, which is great. He's making a living, doing gardening and doing his entertainment. And my mum, mobile hairdresser, cool. But that's never going to make me rich. Yeah. I'm never going to be able to scale that and make millions of pounds. Whereas property, I think I can. So I really just chose what I thought was the best business and thought, if I master that, if I get good at that, if I get really good at hairdressing, maybe I can have a salon. If I get really good at, this or building but if I get really good at property investment, I'm going to get rich. Yeah. And I did. I got very rich.
Absolutely. So I really commend you for that. You're doing absolutely amazing on that. Congratulations in buying a massive stake in Property Tribes.
Thank you.
Why?
Property Tribes is the largest landlord online community in the UK. 65,000 landlords on there, all from the UK. And I thought it was a great platform, but it needed a lot of improvement. It's quite a toxic place. There's been a lot of racism on there. They spoke about me a lot on there. In fact, most of their most widely viewed threads were about me. And a lot weren't that positive.
I know, I picked some of them up. Yeah.
So I thought, well, if they're going to talk about me, at least let me get paid.
Of course.
At least let me get paid. That. So, no, I'm a person of significant control at Property Tribes, and I own 35%. Okay. I'm a 35% shareholder.
That is very good. When you share that online, I commented on that thread myself because I faced it. You know, I'm a real proof to you then, because when I started my property investment journey, I was going to different viewings. They were not giving me the properties, right? I hit all the boxes and all that sort of thing. But again, how I realized it was a race thing is when I met a landlord who told me, I'm not going to rent your property because you are black. He literally told me, right?
Shocking.
But he did not tell me at that point, right? He told me when I insisted on him, right? I never gave up. I said, I want to know why no, right? And then when I took his property, he came back to me and told me, listen, the reason why I didn't want to give you my property is because one, you were black, and secondly, I had a different perspective about that, right? Then what I did basically is to prove him wrong, right? Then I followed him for about 13 or 14 months to get one of his properties on a rent-to-rent deal. And when I took his property, he realized he had the wrong perception, right? And I was able then to take over 7 of his properties.
Oh, wow.
Right? From that point. And today he called me his nephew or whatever way he called me. And then really recently I borrowed him some money as well. So that then changes perspective.
Yeah.
Some people will run away from it. But it's important for you to face it so that you can kind of change that person's mindset. So in his eyes now, he saw black people in a different way. And the funny thing is also, he's from Bangladesh. He's a black person himself. But because he's been framed up that way, he was thinking that way. So I really was kind of delighted you sharing that with us on the platforms, because you've got lots of followers, lots of people that believe in what you're saying, which helped a lot to kind of promote that people see everybody equally. We are all the same in whatever way we do.
100%.
I know you invest in lots of business adventures, but why property is your main source of income, if I may?
Because I think property is the best and the most stable. If I've got a lot of investments in businesses, but it's possible that those businesses, if I invest in a business, that business could collapse and be worth nothing. Whereas if I invest in a house, even if it collapses, the land still holds its value. Even if the house burns down, I've still got the land, which is actually the majority of the value. So the fact that it is so difficult to be taken off of you, the fact that you can rent it out and there is such a shortage of it, it's just a brilliant business and brilliant investment. And of course, being able to afford affordable homes for people, and you know, one of the things that we do is we build a lot of houses as well. So we're not just buying up houses and buying up streets, and taking away from first-time buyers and pushing the prices up. We're actually building houses and buying run-down homes that have been abandoned for decades and restoring them, and buying commercial properties that are eyesores and public nuisances and converting them into apartments to provide affordable homes and serviced apartments. And so I think I'm getting rich, but I really do believe that I'm making a difference into the economy positively as opposed to negatively, which is important as well. When you start making, I pay myself a salary. So no matter how much money my business makes, my salary doesn't change.
Yeah, of course.
So, and I'm making many millions. And it gets to a point where you've got to think, rather than just looking at how can I make more millions, you've got to think, actually, how can I, continue to grow my business, continue to get rich, but how can I actually have a business model that is going to leave a legacy and going to make a positive difference in the communities? And I think that for me is really important.
So how have you been able to distinguish family life and business?
Everything is all one. So I don't compartmentalize things and say, this is business, this is personal, everything's just life. And my business is a lifestyle. So, me and my wife constantly talk about business.
So you are a multi-millionaire, but why do you want to be more successful?
Because the moment enough is enough and you think you've arrived at the top of the mountain and there's nothing left to achieve or do, you fall miserable and life becomes meaningless and unfulfilled. There has to always be a next goal, a bigger thing, a bigger purpose. So until I die, I always envision myself wanting to grow things to a new level and have new challenges and new targets and continue pushing myself to be the best possible version of myself I can be.
So recession, people are talking about recession. What is your take on what challenges we'll be facing this year and next year?
I think the biggest challenges for property investors is probably not the fact that we're in a recession. It's probably the fact that interest rates have gone up so high.
Yeah.
I mean, base rate was, a year or so ago, 0.1%. Now it's like 4%. Gone up by 40 times.
Yeah.
A lot of landlords are selling up.
Yeah.
House prices are dropping. They've dropped 5 months in a row consecutively.
Yeah.
And that's a problem. I mean, for us as entrepreneurs, there's opportunities there. We're thinking, well, hang on a minute. Could we take on their properties on lease options? And could we rent them as serviced accommodation and push the rent? But that's because we're entrepreneurs. So whenever there's a recession or a crash or a problem in the economy, there's always opportunity. Correct. Most millionaires get rich in recessions.
Yeah.
So quite enjoying the crash.
Okay.
I'm quite enjoying the recession, but on a selfish level.
Yeah. You recently interviewed people in the street. How have you been able to attract more people to you?
How have I been able to attract more people to me? Yeah. Again, I think it's just word of mouth and being good at what you do and being consistent. And if I'm doing things or I'm putting a video out and it doesn't get much interaction, I don't beat myself up. I just move on to the next. If I put a video out or do something that gets loads of interaction, I don't stop and pat myself on the back. I put out the next thing. Just being consistent and continually putting out, good content. And actually helping people and not just thinking about making the money, but also thinking about building your reputation and your brand. It's very important.
Your enthusiasm and your energy is what draws me to you when I first met you. What really keeps you going without losing your energy? I
just have goals. You've got to have a drive. You've got to have a reason for wanting to do something. And I think, I'm just a motivated person, motivated to achieve, motivated to win, competing with myself. And yeah, I've got a lot of energy. I work hard. I think I was born with it. I was born with the fire. If you've not got the fire, then there's a problem. Yeah. If someone comes to me and they're not motivated and they've got no passion and no oomph and no goal and no aspiration, I can't help that person. Yeah. If someone comes to me and they say, I'm really motivated, I'm really ready, I've got a fire that burns. Even if they've got no money, no knowledge, no experience, doesn't matter because they've got the fire. Yeah. And I've got the fire.
What was the worst advice you remember receiving?
Worst advice, save up money and put it in the bank and be frugal.
What is the best book you've ever read or listened to?
The best book I've ever read, The Richest Man in Babylon.
Is there something in the world you fundamentally think is wrong and you'd like to change?
Loads of stuff. The fact that school doesn't teach financial literacy to kids, I think is a tragedy.
Yeah. Okay. This podcast is called Property Investment Blueprint Podcast. What does Property Investment Blueprint means to you?
It means don't try and reinvent the wheel. Follow the tried and tested fundamental processes that have been proven to work in the industry already.
That was an absolute amazing, great.
Good, thank you.
Amazing questions. Thank you. Where should we follow you and where are you hanging out in social media? And obviously you've got your board game out and your one of the books you've wrote. So where can people contact you?
I'm probably most active on Instagram. That's where I hang out. But most of my content is on YouTube. So just search my name, Samuel Leeds.
Okay. Thank you so much for your inspiration. Thank you for being hilarious, humor, and you are the smartest person I've ever interviewed or I've met myself.
Oh, good.
So I really, really appreciate you inviting me to your home to do this podcast. Thank you.
Thank you, Raheem. Respect, man.
Thank you.
Love.
That was good.